Hi, it's Daniel Murphy, and I want to share with you something that I just took me a minute to realize here in the tree care industry. Put yourself in the position of a trainer, someone that's out there that's a professional and he's training other people how to do tree work. He has to use techniques that are reliable techniques that work in all situations. And there's just so many variables when it comes to cutting trees. You've got the species of the tree, the size of the tree, the condition of the tree. There's just so many variables that are going to respond differently depending on any combination of these things. There's a lot of techniques that people that have experience out there in the field know, I can get away with this here, but I won't be able to get away with it there. But if you were going to try to teach somebody that technique and be a professional and be held accountable, there's a lot of liability there. So in training organizations, they're going to be much more interested in teaching techniques that absolutely work, are very conservative. This is another technique that I'm showing you here today, is that it is not reliable. You'll never see this technique taught by a training organization. Please use this technique with discrimination. Practice it in situations where there's nothing valuable at risk. What this technique does is it swings a limb. You have an obstacle below you. If you can swing the limb just a little bit to your left or to your right, you can avoid the obstacle. Otherwise, you're going to have to put a rope in that. Horizontal limbs normally are near horizontal limbs. What do? Well, we've always been taught to make a side notch and then put the top cut on there, just like you would for a tree falling, just trying to angle it in a different direction. Maybe you're going to use a tapered hinge on that. But this technique I found to be much more effective in certain situations. I tried it and it worked really well in that first situation. So I've been playing with it, but it's only been about a year. And so I don't have it all dialed in where I can give you every exact detail. This is when it will work. This is when it won't work. So you're going to have to experiment with yourself. I call this technique, this cut, the side bender, and I hope you enjoy watching this. Please let me know what you think.
It's a fairly sizable branch, maybe 4 inches. And it's right out over the corner of this Japanese maple here. Nice little Jap maple. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but this is right out that way. And that's a pretty valuable tree. So I'm going to swing this thing with the cut only. No lowering line. We just needed to get it to swing past the Japanese maple. I could really be very embarrassed and have a lot of liability here if this cut doesn't work. Sycamore is not a great hinging wood either. So this is what I call the side bender. Instead of using a notch, I'll use multiple kerf cuts, 3-4 kerf cuts, all lined up right next to each other, and then put the top cut out right even with the first kerf cut, or maybe even a little bit past it. And as that first cut closes, it starts coming down, and that second cut, third cut, fourth cut, if they all close, you're going to get quite a bit of swing before the branch actually drops. But if I lose this thing and come straight down where it's coming down, it'll probably break half of that Japanese maple out. So there's some skin in the game here. Instead of making a notch, a sideways pointing notch where you might point the notch down to the side and then make a top cut and try to have that holding wood hold as it folds, instead of doing that, I make multiple kerf cuts at slightly different angles, but all pointing down into the sides. These branches will fold and you'll see every kerf cut compress, and you'll get a good bit of slide movement before it drops. It's much more effective than using a notch. So let's watch those kerf cuts. All right, so I put 4 kerf cuts in there. Can you guys see that?
The top cut here is pointing more down, and then as they come lower on the branch, they're pointing more to the side. So that first cut will initiate a little bit of a downward movement, and then as it closes, hopefully the rest of them will one at a time close, swinging it to the left.
We got 4 feet to move this branch to the side with not a lot of distance to move it in order to clear that Japanese maple. Let's watch how it works out. And she dropped in there perfectly. hopefully we got a good shot to show you how those kerf cuts compressed, and the branch moved over nicely. She's completely off the maple tree. No need for a rope.
It's always difficult to tell exactly what's going on depending on your camera angle. So let's look at some close-ups here in chronological order. Here's the cut starting. It's very difficult to tell how much or if those kerf cuts are closing, but look at the opening here on the back cut and how far that branch moves to the left while it's still attached. And that's the final, just before it let go. It moved over that far. And now let's pan back and take a look at the wide angle. You can see how far it moved out. It's almost completely clear of the Jap maple here. Here you can see that's 4 or 5 feet away from where it is there. And not that far of vertical distance to drop to get that much side movement. I'm very, very happy with this cut. I hope you all try it. You'll find it works better on these 4 or 5 inch limbs than it does on bigger 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 inch limbs. Will not work as well. This is a camera angle from the ground, and unfortunately the cameraman didn't show the very tip of the branch, so it's hard to see exactly how far it moved over. It really doesn't look like it moved that far from this angle, but I wanted to show you this angle anyhow in slow motion. Again, cameras are very deceptive, but this thing moved a good bit over before it came down and cleared just a little brushing on the Japanese maple. And if you actually listen, you can hear it ripping, how far it holds on by the ripping sound. Variables include the diameter of the limb. Effectiveness begins to diminish as limbs get bigger than 6 inches in diameter. The angle of the limb will affect the cut's performance, as will the combination of length and weight of the limb create force that can break the hinge. The side bender does not work well on big, heavy limbs. Effectiveness is also very much species dependent. Better hinging woods tend to be more effective on bigger limbs. The depth and angle of kerf cuts make a huge difference in function, so please experiment in non-critical scenarios to get a feel for this cut. Good luck with it.
Alright guys, so here we have this. You can see that, the way this branch is leaning right over the tips of that sycamore there. I'm going to try to swing it to the right a little bit. Show you a technique I like to do that with. Now if we can get all 4 of them to close, actually she'll come quite a bit further over here. Alright, that's what the cut looks like.
You can see how those fibers look like they held pretty well, and also look at the right side where the kerf cuts were made. They were made at slightly different angles, breaking off the wood. So here's again a still shots during the fall. You can see that those kerf cuts are all completely closed right now. The tree's got a good bit of momentum going out to the right. Now you could ask yourself, okay, can you get that much with a notch and regular back cut, trying to throw it to the side? Possibly, but I found this technique to be much more effective. However, it's not very predictable. It's going to depend a lot on the size of the branch, the species of the wood, exactly how the cuts are made. So good luck with it. You got to experiment in non-critical situations.
I like to have this nice clean grain up here out of that crotch is also preferred for holding wood. So, Daniel Murphy, thanks for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something.
The disclaimer here is that it's only been 1 year since I developed this side bender. So I have yet to dial in all the variables. Please, please, please use it in non-critical situations until you get comfortable with the cut's limitations and its abilities.